to grad students, obviously you do much of the heavy lifting at the university, right? And professors like, me and Dr. Lin and Dr. Mistry and, and Dr. Allen, we, you're our lifeblood. And so making sure that you're supported and that we understand your needs is fundamental to the whole university's success. And so I would love to enter into a conversation about how this new institute can better engage graduate student on campus and provide you with opportunities that you need and your advisors need for your career success. So I'm going to switch to my screen, and then I'm going to ask you to confirm. I no longer can see the faces. Oh, yes, I can. If you could confirm that you can both hear me and that you can see my screen. If somebody could put a thumbs up or something, that would be great. All right. So I'm going to close the window that shows all your faces. So if you're waving at me or grimacing or sticking your tongues out or something, I can't tell, which is good. But if you need me, just break in with your audio, okay? All right. Again, thank you for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me to talk. I like talks, presentations that are conversations. I'm going to be talking at you for a little bit and as I introduce myself and the programs we're doing, but please feel free to break in. And at the end, I'm hoping we can have a conversation about how IREES, which will be is the acronym for Institute for Resilient Environmental and Energy Systems, can support you all better. So I want you to think a little bit while I'm talking about ways in which this institutional program, IREES, can support you. I mean, if you have experience or interest in things like seed grants or help with workshops or, maybe a graduate student affiliate or advisory program, some ways of a conference travel support, industry intern connections. I mean, think about these things. I'm just throwing these things up here that are fairly obvious, but I'm sure you might have some really innovative programs that I can help with in some way, shape, or form, or that I could bring to my fellow directors in the Office of the Vice President to help at a larger scale that maybe cut across more disciplines. So please keep this in mind. A little bit about who I am. As Emmanuel said, I have a chemistry undergraduate degree from Loyola, and I got my PhD. I did a very, right turn shift. I was really interested in organic synthesis chemistry as my undergraduate degree, and that was really what I loved. But there was this field developing called organic geochemistry, which mostly derived from the petroleum industry. And that excited me. And so I wanted to go to this new program at Penn State about it. So I decided to do my PhD there. And I actually had accepted at Northwestern University to do straight synthetic chemistry, but I actually ended up turning that down after I accepted, which I now know is kind of a no-no to do, and signed on to Penn State. After Penn State, I went to a place called the Geophysical Laboratory of the Carnegie Institution of Washington as a postdoctoral fellow. Spent 2 years there, and I worked on high pressure, high temperature chemistry. I was part of one of the PIs for the first, what's called Astrobiology Institute. We're trying to figure out what was happening deep in the subsurface, and I was doing abiotic organic synthesis. But when I started my job at Purdue, that really wasn't what Purdue was looking to support, and I went back more towards my roots in geochemistry, and I started doing low temperature, low pressure isotope geochemistry there. And that's really what I followed through with. And it actually took me into soil science and actually looking at the sustainability of soil and how do we protect the soil on our planet, which is so fundamental to actually obviously food production and water filtration and air quality. But I've done a lot of different things while I was at Purdue. I ran a program for the Department of State called the U.S.-China Eco-Partnership, where we exchanged faculty and students between institutes in the U.S., Purdue, University of Tennessee, and Oak Ridge National Lab, and Chinese Academy of Sciences programs in China. mostly emphasizing things about sustainable agriculture. I directed a research and commercial isotope facility. Commercial meaning it was a recharge facility that we took in samples from industry or other universities and ran them and then supplied them with the data, but also it was a research university. And so my scholarship really revolves around something called stable isotope analysis in the Earth systems. I also ran for 4 years Purdue's Center for the Environment, where we had a number of programs, about 150 affiliated faculty in the beginning, ended up being over 200 toward the end, helped to faculty across campus and students write proposals and better connect together so they could go after some of these grand challenge questions in food, energy, water systems. And I also at Purdue ran a very large program in Peru. We had 160 professors as part of it, 60 at Purdue and 100 in Peru, where we also emphasized capacity building in Peru in technical areas of food, energy, water systems. I wanted to give you a little bit about just kind of what how I think. A lot of my research really emphasizes and helps me think about connections to other programs. And so I'm what's called a biogeochemist. I really look at what's going on below ground in terms of the microbes and the plants, and I use laboratory experiments, stable isotope geochemistry. It's nice to point out that I'm building a stable isotope geochemistry laboratory in the Stevenson Research Technology Center on South Campus. I invite any of you to come by and visit. I work in ecological surveys, sensor development and deployment, and large-scale field experiments. And I work really at the micron to centimeter scale with the chemistry, but then I think about scaling that up across ecosystems, across landscapes, across whole watersheds when I work with modelers. My work has been funded by the Department of Energy and EPA, NSF, USDA, industry, and other universities internationally. And so, this just kind of represents sort of a more exciting areas that I've found that I've worked in, and it's just a little kind of a tour of that. But I've worked in all the way from the high Arctic down to the Atacama Desert of Peru, and I've had the great fortune of meeting people from all over the world and ecosystems all over the world. And it's one of the things that's been a great joy for me of being able to connect my research to people and to places that I would never meet if I basically just stayed in West Lafayette or just stayed in Norman. I've been very, very, very fortunate to be able to do that. And that's one of the great things that I think academia brings is that connection to people, different ideas. So I was brought to OU for my research, but primarily I was brought here to stand up a new program that was developed under the Lead on University Strategic Plan. And as the faculty know here, but I don't know if the graduate students do that, over the last few years, faculty across campus have come together to basically rethink the University of Oklahoma and how it engages the community, the state, the nation in terms of its research, in terms of its education, in terms of workforce development, and developed a series of fundamental pillars for the university to follow and to guide its annual spending. And part of those pillars, Pillar 1 and Pillar 5, really are the underpinnings for how the Office of the Vice President of Research and Partnerships thinks about organizing research on campus and supporting research on campus. And the faculty that are in this room and who advise you spent a lot of time working on this and thinking about this and helping to shape it. And part of the fruits of their labor are the research institutes that were developed, and the beneficiaries are you in that and the other faculty. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about how that Office of Research and Partnerships is helping to guide large-scale convergent research on campus that serves the guidelines and the goals laid forth in the strategic plan. And so there is a strategic research plan that was developed to support Pillar 5 and Pillar 1, which is really elevating the research and outreach and connectivity of OU to the rest of the world. And it basically outlines through a series of visionary programs how the Office of Vice President Research will structure teaming and institutes and partnerships and research programs and education and the processes that support that. And if you haven't actually read either of these, the Lead On Strategic Plan or the Vice President for Research and Partnership Strategic Research Vertical goal chart, I would suggest doing it. It's all online. Part of, or actually one of the major aspects of what that strategic research verticals was to do was to create programs to help develop convergent research on campus, to basically help us think about grand challenges in areas that are essential to our sustainability, to our productivity. Thinking about aerospace and defense and global security, energy, environment, and sustainability, the future of health, and society of community transformation. These were specific research verticals that were created and then charged with a certain mission, a certain set of goals, and a certain set of timelines. And so I was brought in to stand up one of those, the area of energy and environment and sustainability. But there are 4 in total. And there are 3 directors who've been hired to help support those. And the future of health is the next in line for that. But there are also cross-cutting foundational programs on campus that either are new or had existed previously in areas of quantum research, areas of societal change, public policy and research analysis, and advanced radar. And those cross-cutting foundations work with each of the research verticals to help them move their goals forward. So IREES supports the Environment, Energy Systems, and Sustainability Program. And IREES is the institute in that vertical. Now, the committee that helped set the course for IREES framed out what they believe to be sort of the sub-verticals within IREES, areas of Earth systems observation, getting us ready for energy and infrastructure systems transformations in our goal for decarbonization, and developing programs for community resilience and environmental, climate, and energy justice. And so one of the main goals of IREES is really to develop equitable solutions, and equitable is a very important word in that. Equitable solutions to grand challenge problems that are at the intersection of society, the environment, and energy systems. And really thinking about, as our world has to transition toward a net zero carbon economy, how do we do that equitably? How do we do that without leaving people essentially in the dust? How do we do that without leaving whole economies stranded? So those are the kinds of grand challenges that we have to think about. But how do we also do that without also being able to make sure that there's equitable access to all the other goods and services that our ecosystems provide: clean water, clean air, and then safe built environments. So what I'm trying to do as the inaugural director for IREES is really think about your success. You know, that's my job really is your success, your advisor's success. What do I need to build? What do I need to construct in terms of infrastructure on campus, physical infrastructure, research infrastructure, support staff infrastructure to enhance the research capacity, the impact and prestige trajectory of University of Oklahoma itself and its partners. And what I want to do and what I'm doing now in this first year is building that infrastructure to help lead, to help connect, and to help support, and to build an organization that can respond to both internal drivers, and our many internal drivers are really given to us by the Lead on Strategic Plan, but also our external drivers, such as the funding opportunities that are coming from the federal government or from industry. And so what I'm doing is helping to identify strengths and areas for growth, building capabilities and infrastructure. And I could talk about this, towards the end of some of the things that we're pulling together to help clusters of faculty do some certain kinds of monitoring research. Helping with the conversations of cluster hires, bringing in faculty in a certain sort of thematic area so they can support each other. How do we align the research and interests and facilitate collaborations on campus through organizing workshops, through helping with maybe developing white papers, certain types of strategic work in terms of policy briefs? How do we secure strategic partners and build research networks? I spend a lot of my time talking to industry and talking to other universities to help connect the excellent research that's done at OU to other groups, so we can actually develop networks and networks of networks to help us go after very complicated problems. But also then supporting in terms of thinking about seed grants. I have discretionary funds that can be applied to really interesting new problems on campus. So new clusters of faculty who want to approach a certain type of research area, they can apply for seed grants, and we'll have a committee that will evaluate those proposals and basically help to jumpstart research groups. Also providing administrative support, hiring managing directors, hiring operations managers and administrative support to help with things like proposal development, ideation, and teaming. And so this ecosystem that I'm looking to create is really, again, there for your success. This is just really the organizational structure of it when you think about it. And I want to put this up here because I report to the Vice President for Research and Partnerships. And so whatever I do going forward and how I'm structuring the organization, I work with him directly because he is overseeing these institutes. And he is actually giving us sort of a vision of where we are going and how we are taking OU into the future in terms of the research enterprise. One of the things that's critical for me is bringing to IREES faculty who are thought leaders on campus as fellows. So I'm creating a fellows program, and within that program, I'm looking to develop a cohort of faculty who can help and advise and shepherd initiatives in the earth sciences, in energy and infrastructure, and in community resilience and justice. This first 6 months has really been focusing on energy and infrastructure because it aligns with a lot of changes that are happening at the federal government and the Department of Energy. And that's where the fellows have actually been brought in first. So someone who should be very familiar with all of you, Dr. Lee Song, is one of the fellows, helping with thinking about energy optimization and smart and connected communities. Dr. Stephen Crossley is a catalysis expert who's helping us to think about hydrogen production, different ways of doing that that are low carbon intensity. And Dr. Rizba Mokanlu in petroleum engineering, who helping us think about carbon capture and storage issues and how to basically couple energy production to sequestration of carbon. But I'll be also having fellows, additional fellows in the energy and infrastructure area, as well as earth sciences and justice. One thing that wasn't actually, so it's important to point out that the committee that helped to establish sort of the framework of this EES program, which is now IREES, had the vision to think about these three areas: earth sciences, energy and infrastructure, and community resilience and justice. But one of the things that I wanted to bring with me from Purdue was an aspect of thinking about sort of our broader interaction in these areas across Latin America. So like I said, I ran a very large program there, and coming to University of Oklahoma, I realized that there are a lot of Latin experts, and there's a lot of people doing work in Latin America. And I wanted to create a program that helped to aggregate and leverage that strength to think about issues of food, energy, water, sustainability across Latin America. So I'll talk a little bit about LASI, the Latin American Sustainability Initiative, in a moment. So my goal is to create an ecosystem. It's not to create isolated little programs, but to create sort of a dynamic program where faculty are talking and engaging, where graduate students are engaging, where postdocs are brought in, to think about these three sub-pillars of IREES. And what I want these sub-pillars of IREES to do, these strategic research areas, is to create research initiatives. Look across the landscape of these grand challenge problems that we have, pull together those faculty, align them towards the funding opportunities that are coming out now, and create change. Right? We change lives is something that was fundamental in the Lead On Strategic Plan, and I believe we have the privilege actually to do that. And so these research initiatives are focused on change, on changing lives for the better, on transforming our energy and infrastructure systems, and how we monitor that and how we do it equitably. But within these research initiatives, we're going to be developing long-lived signature projects as well, and I'll talk about some of those. And so as this ecosystem grows, what are we going to be doing? Well, we're going to be helping these clusters of faculty engage with funding agencies. There's going to be research announcements coming out from companies, from NGOs, from industry, and from the federal government. We're going to help these clusters of faculty look at the appropriateness of them for our skill sets and apply for them, help to develop those projects, help with ideation and teaming and submission of those grants. We're doing the same thing with industry. I spent lots of my time talking to for the most part now, energy-related industries in Oklahoma about opportunities related to hydrogen and carbon capture. But my job is then to connect them to the faculty, to make sure that the incredible research we're doing on campus is known to these industries, and that those industries, if they're looking to actually support that research, that we help to make those connections and make it long-lived and provide the support for that. And also thinking about OU as a stakeholder, right? What does OU look to achieve, and how can IREES help move that forward in terms of maybe coupled educational programs, internships, and all of that? And so the things that are happening right now in IREES relate to LASI, relate to a hydrogen hub, which I'll talk about, and programs and thinking about how we transform the way we use carbon. But there's so much more that's going on as well. I'm just going to highlight these things. Again, stop me if you want me to dwell on something a little longer. And so that research ecosystem, what am I providing? Because you need to think about the value add, right? If I'm being asked here to lead something and stand up something new, I have to bring the value, right? To the faculty, to the graduate students, to the postdocs, and to the other constituencies. And so I'm there to promote and support faculty research. I'm not an educational program, but research and education are tightly coupled, and we can't forget that. I'm looking to serve as a cross-university connector. I meet weekly with colleagues from OSU and Tulsa, as well as other universities, now moving also to make more connections with MSIs across the state as well, but helping to bridge gaps between universities and find sort of Oklahoma-level strengths in areas. I want to bring new opportunities. I want to help with faculty retention. One of the things that is really important is not just hiring great faculty and bringing them to campus, but keeping them. How do you create an environment where a faculty member feels that they are appreciated, that their research is appreciated, and that their research has opportunities to basically attract other faculty members? And when you have an institute like IREES, it serves that function. Faculty members have jobs in their home departments, yes, but they can look to an institute to really express their great creativity and branching out to other faculty members across campus. And it gives them another sense of belonging. And I think that's very important, and I want IREES to serve that, to help keep the great faculty we hire at OU. I'm looking to build institutional capacity, and I think, after I finish my talk, we can talk about some of the programs that I'm helping to jumpstart in terms of monitoring systems that I'm creating. Obviously, connect with partners, and I want to nucleate new center level programs. So these things like a hydrogen hub or a DOE urban integrated field laboratory. These things are funded programs that could then nucleate to become their own institutes and centers. And I want to be able to basically help IREES be an incubator for those things. So if you will, I'd like to just talk about a couple of example initiatives. One of them, as I mentioned, is LASI, the Latin American Sustainability Initiative. We had the great fortune of hiring an amazing operations manager for LASI. His name is Dr. Victor Maque. He's from Peru, and I worked with him back when I was at Purdue. He's a historian, and his scholarship touches on conflict in Latin America, and conflict that can be related to competition for natural resources. And so he's been essential in helping to make connections to universities and stakeholder groups across Latin America. But the goal of LASI is to, as I write here, is catalyze and support bilateral and multilateral collaborations with our Latin American partners, and helping think about those interconnected environmental, economic, and societal challenges. And again, the great thing that I mentioned about OU is that there is a strong community of research here going on in Latin America. So I'm very excited about trying to create a program that helps to aggregate that. We have 2 projects right now that are housed in LASI. One of them is a collaboration with the Universidad Nacional de San Agustin in Arequipa, which is in the southern region of Peru, and it's funding a program on global change and human health. The other one is a US AID program called Peru Hub, and that was just funded. They're both large-scale programs. Peru Hub is a $15 million overall project. It's going to fund faculty in geography and environmental sustainability, geosciences, and computer engineering. And that project is going to probably start next month. We have our kickoff meeting in May in Peru. The other project is in this very south of Peru, in the desert regions area, one of the driest places in the country, the northern extent of the Atacama Desert. And that is a whole sort of maybe One Health approach to life. And it's talking about climate change, environmental impact, human health, and how those things interact. And they're very exciting. And we have webinars that we run with those. We have movie nights where we bring in directors of documentaries about these intersections in Latin America. And I'll share a link with Dr. Mistry about both of these programs, and he can share it with the group in case you wanted to participate. I'll focus on just a Peru Hub for a second. It is in the northern part of Peru. It's in the Amazonian region. And our main partner is, for short, it's called La Molina, but it's the National Agraria University, La Molina. It's a great research university, and the funding comes from USAID. Our part at University of Oklahoma is to create an integrated soil crop, weather and climate platform. We have something in Oklahoma called the MesoNet. What we're creating is a smaller version of that in the Amazonian region, and using that to help inform decision-making and creating a full value chain from the health of the soil all the way up through finished agricultural products. The goal is sustainable agriculture, economic development, societal improvement in this one particular region. And USAID is focusing on this particular region because it historically is a region of coca production. And so what we're looking to do is to create high value agricultural cropping systems that can keep farmer groups off of producing coca, but provide them with the livelihoods that they need. right? They have to choose, right? They have to feed their families, and they're making choices about how to live their lives. And so we're trying to provide them alternative crop development programs and technologically based decision making. It's very exciting. And this is a project that actually we have interns potentially, but you'd have to want to work in Peru, which to me is one of the greatest places in the world to work. I love working there. And it's all part of a whole system, right? Of stakeholder engagement, field sampling, data collection by remote sensing, spatial analysis, scaling and modeling, and then plugging that into decision support tools. And this is actually part of that project in the southern part of Peru, where we use something called Soil Explorer to actually, when we do data rescue for maps and geologic and soil mapping data, we distribute it to the region. But again, systems approach, which I know you're all familiar with. Part of what we also do is giving agency to people who normally don't have it. We want to get science and data collection into the field, out of the laboratory, out of that kind of ivory tower. And so we're creating portable laboratories that we're distributing to these farmer groups, so they can collect their own data, and we give them the platforms that they can aggregate their data, and then the tools to basically evaluate that data, so they can make decisions about when to fertilize, when to turn on irrigation, when to till. That's going to be coupled to a weather system network that we're establishing there. So we've created manuals and videos in both Spanish and Quechua to help with that translation of this science to the field. And this is a really exciting part of this. And part of these big scale projects must be how to engage stakeholders and how to bring science and decision making that's data driven, but also values the knowledge base of those people you're working with and the values of those people you're working with. It makes for a personally very valuable sort of interaction that you can have in these larger projects. Another type of initiative, as we're thinking about clean energy transitions, we know we have severe climate change impacts across this world. We know they exist all over the United States. To meet our climate mitigation goals, we're being challenged by stakeholders, from investors to our federal government to the citizenry, to transform the way we use carbon and how we drive our economy. Right? To meet climate goals, we have to create an economy that sequesters ultimately more carbon than emits. We need to get the greenhouse gases out of the atmosphere that hold in the heat and cause climate variability. An essential part of that is transforming energy generation and energy use and the infrastructure associated with that. And we need to transform it to one that is carbon neutral or ideally carbon negative. Hydrogen has a potential to play a significant role in that transition. So we're looking at opportunities that touch upon carbon economies and hydrogen economies. And this is just a little graphic I made of thinking about sort of the drivers for how do we create an economy that sequesters more carbon than it emits. And so we need a new carbon economy, right? And it has to, and we're doing this because we have drivers. We have environmental protection drivers, social justice drivers, resource conservation drivers, and climate change mitigation drivers. And we have constraints, though, right? We can't just say we're going to not use fossil fuels ever. That's ridiculous, right? We need to think about our economic constraints, our societal constraints, our environmental and our technological constraints, and how do we transition equitably from a carbon intensive energy system, economy, to one that is carbon neutral or carbon negative. And we need to think about those solutions in terms of our carbon markets, in terms of decarbonization, in terms of ways we sequester carbon or reuse innovation that makes sense for the region, right? Each region has a different capacity to actually perform these solutions. And so we need to look across, let's say, Oklahoma, and think where we can play a role in this and where we can not basically have those who have the least capacity to adapt, right, suffer the most, and what industries can support this decarbonization with their workforce and help us transition to, let's say, whether it's an EV-based solutions or hydrogen-based solutions in an equitable way. Our federal government right now not only is challenging us to do this, but they're also providing resources for us to move in this direction. So the Department of Energy is promoting what are called hydrogen hubs. And it's doing it through a completely new program called the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, the OCED. They're providing $21.5 million in areas of creating hydrogen hubs, which I'll talk about in a second, direct air capture research, clean energy demonstrations for rural areas, carbon capture, advanced nuclear, clean energy demonstrations on mine lands, and industrial emissions. But when they say demonstrations, they mean high technology readiness level tools and programs that can be deployed now and can support actually movement into this area. Now, the hub program, the $8 billion program, is meant to be a network of clean hydrogen producers, potential clean hydrogen consumers, and the connective infrastructure that basically pulls that all together, whether it's the reusing our natural gas lines and transforming them to transport hydrogen, storing hydrogen in our pore space, et cetera. And so producers, consumers, and infrastructure. And then the University of Oklahoma, OSU, Tulsa University are helping to develop that workforce, helping with safety codes and standards, and being that sort of connective sinew between industry and state and local governments and other stakeholders. We're participating in this process. And the Secretary of Energy, Ken Wagner, the Secretary of Energy and the Environment, had the vision before any of this came out to actually look across the state and think about, how does Oklahoma position itself in terms of a hydrogen economy? And he created a task force, which University of Oklahoma participated in, but so did industry and other stakeholder groups. And they created a task force report as a roadmap for how Oklahoma is positioned in the hydrogen economy. And this is all online in the Department of Energy and the Environment. And I suggest you read this. It's quite fascinating. And it talks about OU strengths, OSU strengths, University of Tulsa strengths, and our industry strength as well. And so we're participating in that, and I could talk to you more about what we're doing with that. I just want to kind of finish up just talking about where I am in terms of standing up this institute. So I've been here 7 months, and I've tried to lay out sort of intermediate, short-term, and long-term goals for the IREES priorities. Right, we've identified a lot of our partnerships. We've held a lot of listening sessions, and that's really important. And these workshops are, for me, really important to listen to what the faculty are identifying as their priorities, their strengths, and their weaknesses, and how do I help pull that together. We've actually done a lot of our staffing. We're not quite done yet. I still don't have a managing director for the overall institute, but we have a search. And we're into that next phase where I'm starting to integrate more into the colleges, connecting more with the federal agencies and bringing them closer to our OU faculty, and thinking about major instrumentation needs or critical infrastructure on campus that can help research faculty go after some of these very large grants and help their graduate students develop that preliminary data that they need to actually go after those grants as well. But ultimately, I want OU and IREES to be the resource and expertise in these thematic areas that we're promoting for the state, for the federal government, and for industry, and for other stakeholders in Oklahoma and the world. I want to be able to then think about new institutes and new centers that we could spin off in all new areas that maybe we don't even imagine are going to be important in 5 years. But with your input, I think we can help plan to think about, what's coming down the pike and what we can plan to have excellence in. And so I'm just going to stop there, and I want to come back. So any questions you might have, But I also want to make sure, and if we don't do it today, that's fine, but we set up a time to talk about how you think IREES can promote graduate student research on campus. You know, again, seed grants, workshops, affiliate programs, you name it. But I'm going to stop there and open it up to questions. And I hope I've provided you some exciting information about where we're going and how we can engage further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Timothy Filley. When you were talking, it brought to my mind so many ways that my research or other people's research can fit into. We are in the world of data and machine learning era, so it's very important to kind of get into that, like be quantifiable data. So
I agree. I think that's, yeah. I mean, that's just an amazing underpinning. Actually, the next talk you have, or two talks from now, you're talking to Professor David Ebert from DISC, and I know he will delve into that with you. But enabling that requires data, massive amounts of data and monitoring. And so one of the things that I'm helping with that in terms of the people at OU who want to work in sort of urban meteorology, urban health, is I'm going to fund a platform of sensors across Oklahoma City to help restart what's called a micronet. So all-in-one sensors positioned appropriately across the city, where we can measure PM 2.5, PM 10, radiation budgets, carbon monoxide, CO2, and that would help with those models that can in real time support decision making about air quality, about urban heat island effects, about boundary layer meteorology between buildings, and how you actually design the city of the future so everyone benefits, and those who right now are suffering from excessive heat accumulation in certain areas or excessive pollution, we can mitigate those problems.
Before we go into the questions or discussion, I would like to mention recognize few professors that have joined us. Dr. Pejman Kezenpo, thank you for joining us. Our very own director, Dr. Kumar Pathasarathi, thank you for joining us today. And this is an open discussion. Please.
I think there's someone else. I think I see a couple other names too.
I think I'm missing Dr. Chikai, sorry. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Naidu.
And Dr. Zhang. Dr. Zhang also from our department.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. So please, this is an open discussion. Like I say, we are hospitable community. We love people. We like your discussion, your input. So please, any question or comments?
May I? Hi, am I audible?
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I joined a little bit late, so sorry for that.
That's okay.
Yeah, I am Prakash, and let me introduce myself. I am Dean of R&D at a corporate university in India, but I operate currently in North America from Ottawa. And I am working with Farooq and Janet in the area of different aspects of design. And I am very much interested in this very interesting area, which was presented today. And it is a very important area too for humanity, because it relates directly to sustainability. We had several conferences, international conferences, and a lot of interaction with all the stakeholders on sustainability related issues. and how we can relate sustainability to design and different areas of technology, as well as connecting it with cyber physical social systems, as rightly told, that machine learning and artificial intelligence is there. But at the same time, it has to be related to ground level realities and how design can be implemented at grassroots levels. Thank you.
No, I thank you for that, and welcome. It's a pleasure to meet you. And you know, actually talking to Farouk and Janet about, you know, their work in cyber physical systems is one of the things that made me think about, you know, what are some of the enabling monitoring systems that can parameterize the models that they have. And so I started asking across campus, what's missing? Right? And one of the things that came up related to Oklahoma City. How do we model change? How do we model where we need to impact and alter our smart and connected cities? And this is one of the reasons why I also wanted to engage Dr. Lee Song, because the way she thinks in that way is so important. So monitoring Oklahoma City in terms of the urban environment is one area. The other group are the, not the urban ecologists, but the actual grassland and forest ecologists. We have a field site called Kessler that's owned by University of Oklahoma, but it has no below ground sensing at all. So we don't know soil moisture, we don't know temperature at depth, we don't know electrical conductivity, which tells us about salinization and things like that. So I'm working to help develop a sensor program across Kessler. So we can get that, which ultimately then I'd like to layer on top of that below ground sensing gas flux. The other sensor platform, it relates to our ability to monitor methane, CO2, and as it's derived from either thermogenic or biogenic, and how do we tell the difference? And so I am purchasing two called cavity ring down systems that give you the C13 of CO2 and methane, and then ethane and methane. I can tell the difference between wet and dry gas and thermogenic and biogenic gases that you might be from flaring or from respiration from the ground or from natural methane production and leaky methane from pipes. And I want to put these in a mobile laboratory that we can drive around and basically monitor the ground. Now, I want to make those available to the entire campus. And so what I'm going to do is set up a program where faculty can write grants to either use that. And so say it's Department of Energy and you want to use this system, you would put in a small amount of money to help maintain the system into your grant. And it would feed back to maintain the sensors or whatever it is. But then you can state that you have access to this equipment in your facilities list. And so I want to create things like that help faculty get over a hump, some type of barrier, or they can basically write to use it, and maybe there could be a seed grant to use it to get the preliminary data so they can get that. And so I see one of that as being the major programs that IREES should have, is how to develop connective tissue through sensor programs that bring faculty together, that allow modelers to do their modeling the best they can, and people who are data collectors and experimentalists to do what they do. But again, bringing people together through these enabling systems, I think is very important.
Yeah, speaking of bringing people together, a few weeks ago on February 10th we had Dr. Dong Zheng, that he's also here today, and I think he can take a little bit of time, like 2 or 3 minutes to
Dr. Zheng, hello.
relate your project with this research that we just did, this presentation. Dr. Dong Zheng, please.
Yes, thanks, Emmanuel. Great to see everyone. I didn't get a chance to introduce myself earlier. So I'm Dong. So currently a junior faculty member at Aerospace and Mechanical Engineering. joined OU in September last year. So this is my second semester.
We started at the same time.
Oh, really? Okay, cool. Yeah, I gave a seminar a few weeks back in this GSC seminar talking about my work on energy storage systems and specifically battery management systems. So I'm trained in my background is in control engineering, and then the application I'm thinking about is how we could use these control algorithms, optimization, estimation algorithms, and apply them to battery management systems. Essentially, how you could, for example, charge a battery faster without degrading them too much. How you could fuse real-time data with mathematical models to probe information inside these electrochemical storage systems using limited sensing like voltage, temperature, things like that, right? How you could know those electrochemical information inside. I just think what Tim, what you just talked about on energy systems and sustainability is super interesting.
Wouldn't it be exciting if University of Oklahoma converted its entire fleet to electric, and then the whole university could be your laboratory?
Oh yeah.
So last week, I was invited to a business roundtable in the Department of Commerce, Oklahoma Department of Commerce, and it was an automotive industry roundtable, but it's kind of transitioning to sort of the future of mobility. But at that roundtable were C-level and other level administrators from companies from around the state to think about how Oklahoma can be a leader in the automotive industry. And so there were battery companies there. There were electric car companies there, Canoe, for example, and they were all talking about the need to develop integrated infrastructure across the state, and the demonstration projects that are needed, in addition to all the supply chain problems that are needed for batteries in terms of our critical minerals. But this is an exciting area, and the Department of Commerce at Oklahoma is strongly pushing this. And so I think you will find the state of Oklahoma and the DOT and the DOC as potentially really interesting partners. And there are some connections that they probably would help you make.
Thank you.
Yep. Awesome. Is there anyone else that would like to have a question for Rogue? Dr. Kai?
If I could say one more thing too, as there are programs on campus like the Southern Plains Transportation Center, Dr. Jung, that you might start talking, if you're not already doing that, I don't know, but talking to that group as they develop their renewals and that might be something. Professor Musharraf Zaman might be someone to talk to as well if you're looking for other connections on campus.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Thanks.
So there are two things that I want to take away from your talk. One is the pitch that you made to graduate students, because this is the graduate student community. The pitch that you made, I think, is absolutely fabulous, because this is typically graduate students are ignored at OU. Okay? And the fact that it's something tangible. It's not just a one-way street where you take the information, but you're offering internships. And I think this is fantastic, because there's value in it for graduate students other than them providing input and the input getting lost. And so I think it'd be really lovely if you could join us on the 8th of April at 4 p.m. To address the leadership team of the graduate student community and share your ideas specifically on the internships, and then how the graduate student community can help you provide the information you need, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, let me look at the calendar for that. I typically
We can take this offline. We can move the
yeah,
okay?
because we're in the middle of searches, and I'm on a search committee, and so at least for the next couple of weeks, I think my Fridays at that time are in search committee obligations.
So Rachel and Roshan will get in touch with Laura,
Okay.
find a date and time, and we can move the date and time just for you.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
The second thing that I'd like to point out to you is that Janet, Wes, Honeycutt, Binbin, Lee Fithian, and I are putting together a proposal to the NSF Cyber Physical System program. And what you've just mentioned about the mobile laboratory with a thermogenic and biogenic system sensors would be very appropriate to us. So we'd like to have a session with you to
Okay.
see how we can incorporate that, because that's an absolute, it's right up what we are talking about right now.
Perfect. And that's what I want, right? I want faculty teams to use this stuff, and I want them to, think about how they can work with me to make it sustainable use, right? Finding the money to buy it is not the hardest thing. Finding users who contribute back to it to help it be maintained in a way that it's long-lived is the issue. So this is great.
So those are 2 action items from my side.
Thank you.
Great, Tim. Well, can I ask, or Tim, yeah, I think like we have a few email iterations, but it's good to meet here. And thank you for the informative seminar. That's very helpful. Just one comment that I would like to make is you have discussed about the strengths or the issues related to Oklahoma, and there is another environmental aspect that may be relevant to IREES. That is about the electricity generation and electricity market of Oklahoma. So Oklahoma is part of SPP, Southwest Power Pool, and SPP is the dirtiest electricity market in the US. And also, like for all the other markets, they are adopting this renewable kind of regulations and also decarbonization regulations policies, but SPP has not implemented any and does not have any plans so far to address this issue. And because of that, OKC has a few large coal generation plants, and that are generated basically like this PM 2.5, the NOx, SO2, all those pollutants, and that can affect the health of this OKC residents, right? Population, and that's also what we are looking at in response to an EPA, the Urban Environmental Justice Program. So that's to understand how that can impact the health and also the overall well-being of OKC residents. And for that, like actually, we are trying to leverage the Mesonet. I think it's close to the micronet. Is it the same or?
No, the micronet doesn't exist yet. So if you're working with the Mesonet, you're working with Brad Ilston most likely.
Right.
And so I'm working with Brad to try to help set up the micronet. And so Brad has been contacted by the city of Oklahoma to reinvigorate the micronet. It existed once and it no longer is viable. And so what I'm doing is I'm trying to have IREES be and sort of a way to enable at least the first set of sensors to go out.
Great, I see. So my understanding is micronet is a higher resolution version of a Mesonet. Is that right?
Yes, it is. It is.
Okay.
With different kinds of, but with more sensors and maybe even super sites within the city itself. So
I see. Great.
yeah.
Yes.
We'd also like to basically sense the green space too. And
Right.
so, yes, let's talk offline and we could talk more about this and how I can help.
Yes, that would be great. Yes. And I just want to bring this up to your attention. And another question I have is, does IREES have any social experts in the center or institute that may be looking at this environmental injustice from the social aspect?
So right now, I have not set up that program. So we have a whole pillar that's related to environmental justice, climate justice, and energy justice. But right now, I'm leveraging the great strengths that the Office of the Vice President for Research and Partnerships has in one of the other pillars is the society and community transformation that's led by Dr. Shannon Connolly. And the Institute for Public Policy and Research and Analysis that is led by Dr. Hank Jenkins Smith and Dr. Carol Silva. And so they have been our partners in that development. But in FY23, I'll be bringing on fellows who are justice fellows specifically to address that.
That's good to know. Great, thank you. Yes, and yeah, that's my comments, and Tim, and I would love
please
to
email me.
Sure, yeah, I will. Thank you.
So one of the interesting things about working with Brad Ilston is we are co-PIs in that project in Peru. And so what we're doing is creating a mini mesonet in the Huallaga Valley in San Martin in Peru, high elevation, to basically give them high resolution weather and soil data. And then we're setting up an identical system at Kessler, so we can have our Peruvian stakeholder, our collaborators, come to OU, train at Kessler on the exact same systems, and then we can share that data back and forth. And so we can think about models like this of having places at OU that we maintain that you could actually link up with other collaborators around the world.
Right. Yeah, that's very nice concept. And would the micronet at OKC, would that also include soil data, or is that only including weather data?
That the way it's envisioned now, how they were reached out, how OKC reached out to Brad was meteorological, atmospheric chemistry. Right. But I want to take the same thing we're doing at Kessler, and I want to do it in OKC. And so I've been engaging with our Oklahoma's Department of Environmental Quality about how to partner with them on just that, what you're talking about.
Great. Yep. Great. Thanks. Just to summarize, I'm, like I said, my job is your success. That's why I'm here. I have my own research, and eventually I'll get to it. But my job is really to enable you to be the best scientist you can be, to have the best partnerships, and to have the best resources available to you. And so if you have an idea, do not hesitate. Something cool you want to try, collaborators you're looking to find, just email me. And my door's open, virtually and physically.
I think this was very, very nice presentation, and knowing that we have available resources is the most important thing. And I think we're coming close to our session here. If there's no one else that wants to say something, I would like to invite our mentor Farooq to close with closing statement. And once again, thank you, Dr. Timothy Filley. We enjoyed your talk.
My pleasure.
And my closing statement will be very brief. What you have touched me today with is my job is your success. that statement says a huge amount. It really truly says a huge amount that my job is your success. In other words, you're looking for our success and looking to invest in us and make it possible for us to succeed. And this is a very positive statement, not just for the faculty, but also for graduate students and everybody on campus. So thank you very much for sharing this statement of yours and showing us how you're going about to help us succeed. So Timothy, thank you very much indeed.
Well, it's my pleasure, and it's my it's my privilege to have the faculty and the vice president for research and put that trust in me. So I'm gonna try to make sure I live up to it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to stop recording, and then typically we have